Can a single moment, a chance encounter in a crowded hallway, unravel the threads of a forgotten past and change the course of a nation's heart? The air in the Salgado Ouedraogo National Hospital hung thick with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken anxieties. Captain Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso, felt the fatigue clinging to the very walls, peeling paint like sunburned skin. He'd seen it in the eyes of the waiting patients, some perched on hard benches, others resigned to the tile floor. He'd felt it in the weary handshake of an old man whose gratitude mixed with desperation. He had brushed off his chief of staff's concerns, ignored the carefully planned schedule. A leader, he believed, needed to feel the pulse of his people not through reports, but through shared air, through seeing the unvarnished truth. His simple Burkinabe shirt felt right, shedding the armor of state for the vulnerability of connection. He'd come with only 2 quiet guards, slipping into the vast hospital almost unnoticed, the director scrambling to greet him, flustered by the lack of warning. "That's exactly why I came this way," Captain Traore had said gently. "Show me things as they are." And they were showing him. The reality was stark. Strained resources, tired faces, the quiet hum of resilience battling against need. Dr. Ouattara, the head of pediatrics, his face etched with the lines of long hours, but his eyes still holding a spark of fierce dedication, was leading him towards the intensive care unit. He spoke of critical needs, of battles fought daily for the smallest lives. They turned a corner. The conversation momentarily paused, and that's when it happened. Captain Traore's foot slid abruptly on a patch of damp floor. He caught himself just before falling, his balance returning instantly, a reflex honed by years of military discipline. "Be careful, the floor was just cleaned," a woman's voice murmured, soft and slightly apologetic. He turned. An older woman in a faded blue uniform stood nearby, holding a mop and bucket, her head bowed, clearly embarrassed by the near mishap. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, not looking up. Her deference was expected, yet something felt off. "It's nothing, madam." "I wasn't watching my step," Captain Traore replied, his tone kind. He was about to move on, to follow Dr. Ouattara towards the critical care ward, but he hesitated. A strange current, an unexpected jolt like static electricity, ran through him. Something in her posture, the slight tremble in her voice, the way she held herself. It snagged on a hidden corner of his mind. He looked closer, trying to see her face beneath the edge of her traditional headscarf. Why did she seem so intensely, inexplicably familiar? Time seemed to thin around them. Dr. Ouattara shifted, eager to continue the tour, but Captain Traore remained rooted to the spot. The bustling sounds of the hospital, distant calls, the squeak of trolley wheels, hushed conversations, faded into a dull roar. "Still with me? Drop a yes in the comments to let me know you're tuned in." "What is your name, madam?" he asked, the question sudden, cutting through the hospital noise. The cleaning lady flinched, surprised by the direct address from the nation's leader. Slowly, hesitantly, she raised her head. Her face, lined by years and hard work, held a gentleness that seemed strangely out of place amidst the starkness of her uniform and task. But it was her eyes, deep knowing, and now wide with a dawning, fearful recognition, that struck him like a physical blow. "My name is Aminata," she said, her voice barely audible. Yet the name crashed into Captain Traore's consciousness like a forgotten echo, a half-remembered song from a lifetime ago. Aminata. A common name, yes, but this felt specific, personal, resonant. It unlocked a door he hadn't even known existed. He felt a tremor in his own hands. Kwaogo. The name of his childhood village surfaced unbidden. Images flashed dusty paths, the scent of burning wood, the particular slant of sunlight through the leaves of a mango tree. But the faces were blurred, the connections lost. How could this woman, this cleaner, hold a key to that locked part of him? His official visit, the hospital's problems, the waiting doctor, all receded. There was only this woman, Aminata, and the swirling vortex of questions in his mind. He managed a polite, "Thank you, Aminata," though his voice felt thick, distant. He forced himself to turn, to follow Dr. Ouattara, but his mind was no longer on incubators or 4 drips. It was lost in the maze of his own fragmented past, chasing the ghost of a feeling sparked by a cleaning lady's eyes. Later, as Dr. Ouattara explained the challenges in the maternity ward, Captain Traore saw her again. Aminata, walking down an adjacent corridor, her shoulders slightly slumped, carrying her bucket. An irresistible force pulled him. He excused himself abruptly from the official group. "Doctor, please continue with my chief of staff. I will rejoin you shortly." He didn't wait for an answer, striding purposefully down the hallway until he caught up with her. Aminata started, turning with wide, apprehensive eyes. "Forgive me for disturbing you again, Aminata," he said, his voice softer now, trying to bridge the immense gap between their stations. "I would like to ask you a few more questions, if you don't mind." Her hands tightened on the mop handle. I haven't done anything wrong, Mr. President," she stammered, fear mingling with confusion. "I know," he reassured her with a gentle smile. "Tell me, how long have you worked here?" 23 years, sir," she replied, her gaze still fixed on the floor. "I came here after I left my village." "And which village was that?" he pressed, his heart beginning to pound. "From Kwaogo," she whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. "In the Samatenga province." Kwaogo. It hit him like a physical force. The village of his early childhood, the place where his father died, the place he left so long ago. Memories flooded back, the taste of millet porridge, the sound of women singing by the well, the specific pattern of cracks on the mud wall of a hut. "Did you?" He hesitated, the name feeling sacred and heavy on his tongue. "Did you know a woman named Fatima there?" Aminata lifted her head fully then, her eyes meeting his directly for the first time. The depth of emotion swirling within them, shock, sorrow, recognition, and something akin to love, stole his breath. "Fatima," she breathed, tears instantly welling. "Yes, I knew her well. She was..." Her voice broke. "She was your mother, your biological mother." The sterile hospital hallway seemed to tilt. Captain Traore felt the blood rush from his face. So she knew. She knew his mother. She knew him. Aminata nodded slowly, tears now tracing paths down her weathered cheeks. "I knew you, Ibrahim, when you were just a little boy. You were only 5 when your father passed." A profound silence descended, broken only by the distant beep of a machine and the drumming in Captain Traore's ears. Time warped, stretching and compressing. The president of Burkina Faso ceased to exist. There was only Ibra, the little boy from Kwaogo, standing before a woman who held the missing pieces of his life. "Were you close to my family, Aminata?" he asked, his voice raspy. She wiped a tear with the back of her rough hand. "I was more than a neighbor, Ibrahim," she said softly, her gaze holding his. "But perhaps this is not the place." He understood. The public corridor, the possibility of interruption, the sheer weight of the revelation, it demanded privacy, quiet time. Yet the thread, once grasped, could not be easily released. "Where do you live now?" "In the Depoya neighborhood, sir. A small house. I share it with my niece." "I will come to visit you, Aminata," Captain Traore declared, the decision forming instantly, solidifying out of the emotional fog. "Tomorrow, if that is acceptable?" Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You? To my home? But it is humble, sir, not fit for—" "It is not the president who will come, Aminata," he interrupted gently. "It is the boy from Kwaogo seeking his past." With those words hanging in the air, heavy with unspoken history, he forced himself to rejoin his delegation. The rest of the tour passed in a blur. He nodded, listened, made the appropriate comments about equipment shortages and staffing needs, but his mind was elsewhere, circling back to Aminata, to Kwaogo, to a past suddenly, shockingly alive. Who was she truly? What role had she played? Why had she been erased from his memory? Back in the quiet solitude of the presidential palace, Captain Ibrahim Traore canceled his evening appointments. He retreated to his private study, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He found an old, seldom opened photo album. Faded images stared back. His mother Fatima's kind face, a small boy holding her hand him. Pictures of the village, the round huts, the ancient baobab tree. But Aminata's face was nowhere to be seen. It was as if she existed only in that strange, resonant pocket of his memory triggered in the hospital hallway. He picked up the secure phone. "Find everything you can about a woman named Aminata Ouedraogo," he instructed his most trusted aide. "From Kyogo. Works as a cleaner at Yalgado Hospital. Keep this confidential." Sleep offered little respite that night. Fragments of memory surfaced like bubbles in murky water. A woman singing a lullaby, the cool touch of hands applying a herbal paste to a scraped knee, the flickering light of a kerosene lamp illuminating gentle features during a bedtime story. Was it Fatima? Was it Aminata? The faces merged, indistinct, ghosts of nurture lost in the mists of time. Why couldn't he remember her clearly? What had happened after his mother died? The silence in his memory felt like a wound. Before dawn, Captain Traore was awake, his resolve firm. He would go to Depoya, not as the head of state, but as Ibrahim, the man searching for himself. His aide had delivered a thin file. Aminata Ouedraogo, 63, widow, employed at the hospital since 1998, resident of Depoya. Nothing extraordinary, except perhaps the quiet tenacity of holding the same humble job for nearly a quarter of a century. He dressed simply, dark trousers, a plain cotton shirt. His usual sprawling security detail was dismissed. Only his driver and a single, discreet guard would accompany him in an unmarked car. As he left, his chief of staff intercepted him, alarmed. "Mr. President, your video conference with the President of Ghana is scheduled for 11. "Postpone it," Captain Traore replied, his voice calm but absolute. "Inform his office I have an urgent personal matter." The car moved through the awakening streets of Ouagadougou. Morning markets buzzed with energy, vendors setting up stalls, uniformed children heading to school. Through the tinted window, Captain Traore watched the familiar rhythm of the city, a life that felt both distant from his presidential duties and intimately connected to the boy he once was. They reached Depoya, navigating its narrow, unpaved streets lined with modest blockhouses. The driver slowed near a dwelling painted a faded yellow, laundry fluttering like flags in the small, sandy yard. "This is the address, sir," the guard confirmed. "Wait here," Captain Traore instructed. "I'm going alone." He pushed open the creaking metal gate and stepped into the yard. A young woman looked up from washing dishes near an outdoor tap, her eyes widening in stunned recognition. "Bonjour," Captain Traore said simply. "I am looking for Madame Aminata Ouedraogo." Too shocked for words, the young woman just pointed towards a partly open door. He nodded his thanks and approached, knocking softly. "Come in," a familiar voice called from within. The room was small but impeccably clean. Simple wooden furniture, a few framed photographs, colorful wax print fabric draped over the chairs. An air of quiet dignity pervaded the space. Aminata was sitting near the window, dressed in a traditional wrap of deep blue and ochre. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I was expecting you," she said calmly, gesturing towards a low stool. "I have made tea." He sat opposite her. The silence between them was thick with unspoken emotion, years of separation, and the weight of rediscovered history. Outside, the sounds of the neighborhood drifted in, children laughing, the putter of a motorbike, a vendor's rhythmic call. "Aminata," Captain Traore began, his voice low, "since yesterday, I cannot stop thinking. Your face, it is like a memory I cannot quite grasp." Aminata poured the fragrant tea with steady, graceful hands. "Children forget," she said softly, her gaze profound. "It is the way of things. The mind protects itself, perhaps. But the heart, sometimes the heart remembers what the mind has buried." She rose slowly, walked to a small, dark wooden chest, and lifted the lid. From within, she carefully took out an old, worn wooden box. Opening it, she produced a small object, a simple bracelet, crafted from colorful beads and small cowrie shells, strung on faded leather. "You wore this," she whispered, holding it out to him. "On your wrist. It was a gift from your mother, Fatima. She had the village Marabout bless it for your protection." Captain Traore took the bracelet, its smooth, cool beads resting in his palm. It felt impossibly familiar. A cascade of sensations washed over him. The feel of these exact beads under his thumb as a small child, counting them, rubbing them for comfort before sleep. A specific memory, sharp and clear. Hiding behind a large water pot, clutching this bracelet, crying softly after falling down. How do you have this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Aminata took a deep breath, settling back onto her stool. "When your mother, Fatima, grew very ill," she began, her voice gentle but clear. "I was her closest friend, her neighbor. My own husband had passed the year before. We leaned on each other. As she felt her strength failing, she made me promise to look after you." Tears welled in Aminata's eyes again, but she continued, her voice gaining strength from the telling. "For almost 2 years after she passed, Ibrahim, I raised you. As my own son. I cooked your meals, washed your clothes, chased away your nightmares with stories under the stars. You couldn't say my name properly. You called me Mama Nina. Mama Nina." The name struck his heart like a gong. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, warmth, safety, the scent of shea butter, a low humming song. Suddenly, the blurred face from his fragmented dreams sharpened. It was Aminata, her warm laugh, carrying him on her back, pointing out weaver birds' nests, patiently teaching him words, rubbing his chest with pungent herbs when he coughed. "I remember," he whispered, the admission cracking through decades of forgetting. "Mama Nina, I remember you." A tearful smile broke through Aminata's own sorrow. "But then," she continued, the pain still evident in her voice, "when Fatima was gone 2 years, your uncle arrived. Your father's brother. He came from the city. He said tradition dictated a boy must be raised by his paternal family. I pleaded, Ibrahim. I begged him to let you stay. But I was just a widow, alone, with no standing against a man of the family arriving with such authority." She looked down at her hands, worn from years of scrubbing floors. "They took you away, to Ouagadougou. I wasn't allowed to follow, not even to visit. It was abrupt, final. The silence that followed felt heavy, layered with the injustice and the quiet agony of that separation. Why had it been so absolute? Was it purely tradition, or were there other factors, unspoken tensions, reasons why a grieving woman was so completely cut off from the child she had nurtured? The historical context of familial obligations and gender roles in rural Burkina Faso likely played a huge part, leaving a lone widow with little recourse against the decisions of the paternal lineage. Yet, the totality of the separation felt harsh, hinting perhaps at underlying complexities or fears that remained unspoken. Captain Traore rose from his stool, overcome. He knelt before Aminata, taking her work-roughened hands in his. "You were my mother," he said, the words imbued with the weight of rediscovered truth. "My second mother. How could I have forgotten you?" "You were so young," she consoled him softly, stroking his hand. "And perhaps the adults around you discouraged talk of me, told you to forget the woman from the village. It happens. Grief and new beginnings sometimes demand forgetting. But you, Aminata? How did you live all these years?" he asked, needing to know her story. She gave a small, resigned shrug. "The village held too many ghosts after you left. I came here to the city, found the work at the hospital. It was honest work, hard but honest. I built a simple life. Always," her voice softened, "always I held your memory in my heart. I watched from afar as you grew, became a soldier, rose through the ranks. When you became president, oh, Ibrahim, my heart swelled with pride. My little Ibra. You should have come to me," he said, regret and frustration mingling in his voice. "Found me." Aminata looked at him with gentle wisdom. "And say what?" "Excuse me, Mr. President. I am the woman who changed your cloths and sang you lullabies nearly 40 years ago. Who would have believed me? What guard would have let an old cleaning lady approach you with such a story?" He saw the truth in her words, the impenetrable wall of protocol, security, and status that surrounded him. It would have been impossible. "But destiny," he said, a small smile touching his lips through the tears clouding his eyes. "Destiny made me slip on your freshly mopped floor." "Life has its own currents," Aminata replied simply. Time seemed to dissolve in Aminata's humble living room. Captain Traore shed the mantle of presidency completely. He was Ibrahim, listening intently as Mama Nina resurrected his childhood. She brought out more treasures, faded photographs carefully preserved. There was Fatima, beautiful and smiling. And there, tucked amongst them, several pictures of a small, gap-toothed boy perched proudly on Aminata's lap, holding the very bead bracelet he now clutched in his hand. These were my most precious possessions, she confessed. Every year, on the day I believed was your birthday, I cooked your favorite, rice with groundnut sauce and a piece of chicken. I would share it with neighborhood children and say a prayer for your health, your success. His heart ached with the quiet devotion of this woman who had loved him silently, steadfastly, from the margins of his life. You carried me in your heart all these years, he murmured, deeply moved. A connection of the heart cannot be truly severed, Aminata stated with profound simplicity. Just then, the young niece Fatou returned, carrying a tray with steaming bowls of thick millet paste and a fragrant sauce made with baobab leaves. It was the food of his earliest memories. Aunt Aminata spoke of you often, Fatou said shyly, placing the food down. But I confess, I thought maybe it was just a beautiful story. I never imagined the president himself would sit in our home. Aminata looked at her niece with affection. Fatou is like my own daughter now. Her mother, my younger sister, passed 10 years ago. We look after each other. Captain Traore turned to the young woman. Fatou, your aunt was a mother to me when I had lost my own. Even though my mind forgot, she gave me the foundation of love every child needs. They ate together, the simple meal forging a bond across decades and disparate life paths. Aminata recounted stories. The time he tumbled into a shallow, dry well and had to be rescued, his comical attempts to mimic the rooster's crow at dawn, his inseparable bond with a small, tattered blue blanket. Each anecdote chipped away at the wall around his forgotten years. Do you remember the tale of the clever hare who outsmarted the hyena? She asked, a twinkle in her eye. I always demanded that one, he exclaimed, surprised the memory surfaced so readily. Aminata beamed. Even when you knew every word by heart. A comfortable warmth settled over him. The feeling of coming home to a part of himself he hadn't known was missing. But then, looking at Aminata's worn hands, her tired eyes, the simplicity of her surroundings despite her inner richness, a seriousness returned to his expression. The contrast between her life of toil and his position struck him forcefully. Mama Nina, he said, his voice filled with resolve. I must do something for you. You should not have to work so hard, not at your age. Aminata met his gaze calmly. You came, Ibrahim. You remembered. That is the greatest gift. He shook his head, touched but insistent. No, it is not enough. There is a debt here. A son's debt. I don't want to disrupt your life, but please, allow me to help. A proper retirement. Good health care. And, he added softly, I want to hear more stories. I want to learn everything I can about my mother Fatima through your eyes. I have so much catching up to do. Aminata regarded him with her characteristic quiet wisdom. If that is your wish, Ibrahim, I accept. But I desire nothing grand. Just peace, enough to live comfortably with Fatou. Perhaps a wistful look entered her eyes. Perhaps to visit Kwayogo again sometimes. To touch the soil of my roots. He agreed instantly, moved by her humility. He stood, embracing her tightly. The familiar, comforting scent of shea butter and incense enveloped him. The smell of safety, of Mama Nina. When he finally left her small yellow house, the sun was dipping towards the horizon, painting the dusty street in golden hues. His guard, waiting anxiously by the car, asked, Is everything all right, Mr. President? Captain Traore looked back at the doorway, where Aminata and Fatou stood waving, their figures silhouetted against the warm light from inside. Better than all right, he replied, his voice filled with newfound peace. Today I found myself. The return to the palace felt different. The urgent files, the missed calls, the diplomatic cables, they seemed less significant, viewed through the lens of his profound personal discovery. He summoned his personal secretary immediately. I wish to establish a foundation, he announced, his voice resonating with purpose. A foundation to honor women like Aminata Ouedraogo. Women who nurture, raise, and support others, often in the shadows, their contributions unseen, unthanked. A noble initiative, Mr. President, the secretary replied, pen poised. What shall it be called? Captain Traore thought for a moment, the image of Aminata's steadfast love vivid in his mind. The root of the Heart Foundation, he declared, because these women nourish the hidden roots that sustain our entire society. That night, Captain Ibrahim Traore slept deeply, dreamlessly, for the first time in years. The fragmented memories were gone, replaced by a sense of wholeness, of peace. Weeks turned into a month. Captain Traore ensured Aminata and Fatou were settled comfortably in a pleasant, respectable house in a quiet Ouagadougou neighborhood, not opulent, but secure and peaceful, a place befitting the woman who had sheltered his childhood. Her retirement from the hospital was arranged discreetly, coupled with a generous pension that provided for both her and her niece. The hospital administration, initially baffled by the president's personal interest in a cleaning staff member, handled the matter with quiet efficiency once the unique circumstances became clear. But for Captain Traore, this private support wasn't enough. The story deserved to be told, the honor made public. One morning, an official car arrived at Aminata's new home. Dressed in her finest traditional attire, the colors of Burkina Faso vibrant against her skin, she looked apprehensive. "Where are we going?" she asked the driver nervously. "To the presidential palace, madam," he replied respectfully. "The president awaits you." Fatou squeezed her aunt's hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, auntie. It will be something good." Arriving at the palace, Aminata gasped. Ministers, dignitaries, journalists, and television cameras filled the grand reception hall. Captain Ibrahim Traore himself came forward to greet her, taking her hands gently in his. "Do not be afraid, Mama Nina," he said softly, using his childhood name for her publicly for the first time, his voice carrying easily in the suddenly hushed room. "Today is a special day." He led her towards the front, where a place of honor waited beside the presidential podium. She was stunned to see familiar faces in the crowd, neighbors from Depoya, former colleagues from the hospital, elders from Kwaogo, even the ancient Marabout who had blessed his childhood bracelet. As the nation watched live on television, Captain Ibrahim Traore stepped to the podium. "People of Burkina Faso," he began, his voice clear and resonant with emotion. "I have invited you here today to acknowledge a debt, both personal and national." He turned towards Aminata, whose eyes shone with unshed tears. "This woman beside me, Aminata Ouedraogo, was my second mother. When my own beloved mother, Fatima, passed from illness, Aminata took me in. She fed me, clothed me, comforted me, and loved me as her own son. Life and circumstance separated us, but fate, in its mysterious way, reunited us during an ordinary visit to Yalgado Hospital." A murmur swept through the audience as the extraordinary story unfolded. "For nearly 25 years, he continued, his gaze sweeping the room, but always returning to her, Aminata worked quietly as a cleaner in that very hospital. She lived a life of humility, dignity, and resilience, never asking for recognition, never seeking favor, even when the boy she raised became president." He paused, letting the weight of her quiet strength settle in the room. It is this profound humility, this boundless heart, this unrecognized sacrifice that I wish to honor today, not just for her, but as a symbol for all the unsung women across our nation who build our families, nurture our children, and weave the very fabric of our communities in the quiet corners of life. He then unveiled a commemorative plaque bearing Aminata's name, honoring her maternal devotion. He presented her formally with the documents for her new home and the lifetime pension. But he wasn't finished. "In honor of Aminata, and of all mothers, biological, adoptive, or communal, who step into the role of caregiver," he announced, his voice ringing with conviction, "I hereby declare the establishment of the Root of the Heart Foundation. This foundation will be dedicated to identifying, supporting, and celebrating women who care for orphaned or vulnerable children, providing them with resources, financial assistance, and the public recognition they so richly deserve. Applause thundered through the hall. Aminata, overcome, wept silently. Then, Captain Traore gently encouraged her to speak. Hesitant at first before the microphones and cameras, the elderly woman slowly rose, adjusting her vibrant scarf with innate grace. "I do not have the eloquent words of the educated," she began, her voice soft but steady, carrying a surprising strength. "I only wish to say that love knows no bounds. When I cared for little Ibrahim, I did not think of reward or the future. I did not imagine he would one day lead our nation. I simply loved a child who needed love." She paused, gathering her thoughts, then continued with quiet confidence. "In our villages, there is a saying, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Every woman who lends her hand, her heart, to a child not born from her own womb, follows this ancestral path. I did nothing extraordinary. I merely walked the path laid down by generations before me." She turned to Captain Traore, a radiant smile illuminating her face. "I never lost faith that God would one day allow me to see my son again. Today, my heart overflows. May God bless our president, and may God bless Burkina Faso." Her simple, profound words, broadcast across the nation, resonated deeply. The story of Captain Ibrahim Traore and Mama Nina became more than news. It became a national narrative, a testament to the enduring power of love, humility, and the unexpected ways destiny can weave lives together. In the following weeks, the Root of the Heart Foundation was inundated with support. Donations poured in, volunteers offered their time, and importantly, women across Burkina Faso began sharing their own stories of raising children not their own, creating a network of shared experience and mutual support where previously there had often been silence and isolation. A month later, Captain Traore organized a special journey back to Kyogo. It was his first return since childhood. With Aminata proudly beside him, he walked the familiar dusty paths. He visited the spot where his mother's hut once stood, and the small dwelling where Aminata had welcomed him into her care. The villagers, initially awed by the presidential presence, soon relaxed, seeing their leader sitting humbly under the great baobab tree, listening intently as elders shared half-forgotten stories of the energetic little boy nicknamed Ibra. An elderly woman approached him, her hand trembling slightly as she offered a small object wrapped in cloth. It was a crudely carved wooden spinning top. "You made this yourself," she said, her eyes crinkling at the memory. "So proud you were. Showed it to everyone. I kept it, thinking maybe one day." Captain Traore took the top, its rough texture grounding him in the past. He spun it gently in his palm, a forgotten skill returning instinctively. Aminata watched, her face serene, a quiet joy radiating from her. The circle felt complete. That evening, as the setting sun bled colors across the vast Sahelian sky, Captain Ibrahim Traore and Aminata sat together on a simple wooden bench outside the house where their lives had briefly intertwined decades ago. The laughter of village children playing nearby drifted up toward them like music. "Do you mind," Captain Traore asked softly, "if people now truly call me your son?" Aminata smiled, her eyes reflecting the peaceful twilight. "You have always been my son, Ibrahim," she replied gently. "In my heart, nothing ever changed." They sat in comfortable silence, a president and a former cleaning lady, bound by a love that had endured time, separation, and forgetting. Their story, born from a near fall in a hospital corridor, had become a powerful symbol for their nation, a reminder that true greatness lies not in power or position, but in remembering, honoring, and cherishing the hidden roots of love and care from which we all grow. The ancestors, it seemed, watching from the deepening shadows, surely approved. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If stories like this touch your heart and inspire you, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. Your support helps bring these powerful narratives to light.